Hello there. I decided to do a video diary rather than a written blog article for the poker tournament I played last Thursday, partly because the tournament was also live, so doing a live video seems appropriate, but mainly because I hope it will be a little more interesting than just reading about my bad beats and poor play. The tournament was a £30 buy-in, no limit freeze out. The starting stacks were 9,000 chips, but with optional 2,500 extra to players who registered early enough. Around 57 players started, from which the Camberley boys were represented by myself, Alex, Andy, Jock and John. Being live play, and due to my not making any notes, I'm relying on my memory, but in this video we'll go through some of my key hands as best as I can remember. So my first key hand is in the first level of play, with blinds at the starting levels of 100 for the big blind and 50 for the small blind. As we're still in the first half hour of play, we've only seen around 10 or 12 hands played out, so no real feel for my fellow competitors. There's 9 players at my table and haven't seen any big action so far on any of the hands. So the under the gun player limps, and it's folded round to me in middle position. So I'm looking at my jacks and I'm thinking that I'm definitely going to be raising here, so I decided to put in a raise up to 400. The under the gun player just calls that. So the flop comes down. So we've got a king 10-8, which seems like a good flop for me. The villain checks, so I put in a bet of 1,000, and the villain here flat calls. The turn comes, and it's a jack. So that again seems a very good card for me, so I'm pretty happy here. So the villain checks to me, and I decide to bet out 2,000. But the villain comes in over the top and shoves all in. So here I decide that I'm going to call, and there we are. So the villain then shows ace queen, and he's got the straight compared to my trip jacks, so I'm in a bit of a bad position here, and we get the river, which is a blank, and that's it, hands over for me. Luckily, I do have 1,050 chips left, so I'm not out of the tournament, but certainly pretty much crippled here in the early stages. I will have a little moan here, as although his pre-flop play is reasonable, his check call on the flop to me doesn't really make any sense. At this stage, he's only got 30% chance of winning the hand, but what hands does he think I might have here? If he thinks I've got a bare king, then he's still only a 30% chance to win. If I've got ace king, then he's 15% chance of winning. I also think I got really unlucky here that the jack came on the turn. If it'd been any other card, then I'd either be ahead still, or it would have been a scare card for me, and I wouldn't have got all my money in the middle. As it happens, I had 20% chance of hitting a full house on the river, but there's no way I could really put him on a straight on the turn as it played out. Okay, so moaning over, let's go back to the story. I've got 10 big blinds, and I'm under the gun now, looking down at jack 10 off suit. So I decided to gamble here. Hope everybody folds to my all-in shove. Sadly, I get called by an early position player, and also the big blind comes in as well. Okay, and then the flop comes down, and it's a raggedy flop, so it doesn't really look very good for me really, and both players check. The jack makes things a little bit more interesting, and I'm thinking that maybe I've got a chance now. The early position player bets out, and big blind folds, so we're all in, and my opponent shows jack with a king, so I'm in serious trouble here, and just to make things worse for me, he gets 2 pair on the river. and I'm ruining my rashness of going all in under the gun until somebody actually points out that I've made the flush on the river, so actually managed to triple up. Poker is a funny game really, so when I'm 70% chance to win I lose, and then when I'm 7% to win I win. Still, I can't complain. I've now got 3,200 in chips. Okay, later on the blinds are up to 200, 100, and I'm looking at 6-6 under the gun. I've got 11 big blinds again, 2,200, so decide in this spot to shove. I'm hoping to pick up the blinds, but actually do get called by a player who's got ace queen. So straight race, nothing untoward happens, nobody hits on the flop, so I managed to pick up a decent pot. Not a particularly interesting hand, but certainly a key one for me. On the final hand before the break, the blinds are up to 300, 150 by now, and we'll go up again on the restart. I know the blinds are both tight players and have been quiet this level, so decide to have a go at the blinds with any two cards. As it turns out, I get dealt aces, which makes it obviously a lot easier to put in the standard raise. So I'll make it about 1,000. Surprised and delighted when everybody folds around to the big blind, who then shoves all in. So I can hardly get my call in quick enough, and almost beat him by putting my chips in the pot pretty quickly. And he shows, again to my surprise and delight, a6. So I'm way ahead here, about 80% chance of winning. And then we see the flop. So the flop comes with two clubs, so I'm groaning to myself here, thinking that I'm going to be have my aces cracked here, but turn comes. It's another ace. That doesn't really change matters. I've still got to avoid them clubs. And then the river rags off, so I'm delighted now that I've won a really big hand, and I've now got around about 10,500 chips, so it's near enough to where I actually started the game, and it'll allow me to have a little bit of a relax during the break and look forward to the restart. It's been a tough slog since losing most of my chips on the first hand, or in the first level, but certainly has made it more interesting and exciting game for me so far. After the break I played tight, solid, but wasn't really getting any good hands that I can remember anyway. My chips went up to about 15,000 in peak, which was around average chips at that time, but as the players reduced I drifted down to around 13,200 chips after a couple of unsuccessful jabs at blinds with mediocre cards, and ended up just folding. With the blinds now up to 1,200 and 600, I'm down to 11 big blinds again, so start looking for a good spot to accumulate chips. Sadly no spot has come up for me so far, so when a beginner player who doesn't really know what he's doing limps under the gun, I wonder if this is actually a good spot to try and push everybody out of the pot and take it uncontested. I've been pretty quiet for a couple of levels, so I expect that everybody will fold, except possibly the under the gun player. I reckon that he'll probably have any pair, any ace, any two high cards or any two suited cards, and he might actually fold perhaps only a quarter of the time. So I think it's possibly worth a pop here. As an aside, I worked out afterwards that I'll be 40% to win if he does call. So on balance, I don't think it's such a silly thing that I do here, because as it turns out, I do push all in. With my 8-5 of clubs. And sure enough, everybody folds round to the beginner in the under the gun position, and he shows ace-10 suited, so unfortunately he's going to be calling that all day, every day, and I am 2-1 underdog as I expected if I got called. In fact, neither hand improves, and I actually get knocked out now in around about 25th place. After gathering my thoughts, I went to see how the other Camberley boys have fared. Andy has gone out and gone home already, having been taken out by Jock some time ago. John was in the bar and had gone out not long before me actually, and it was only about 5 minutes later that Alex joined us. That Jock was going strong at this stage with about average chips and only 20 players left. I chatted to John for a few minutes and then decided to go home myself, but Jock suddenly appeared, having stuck all his chips in a head, and then his opponent hit runner to take him out in around 19th place, so we all came away with nothing in the end. Overall, I feel I had a good game. Okay, I was taking more risks than normal, but my chip position dictated this approach. Having to play loose aggressive probably made my night more interesting, as I would normally play a lot more passively if I was near or above average chips. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting, and I'm happy for you to put up any comments you may have on the blogspot entry.